the Mind, where we discuss the mind and brain and all its domains. My name is Khalid Mahmood. Today's topic is peak oil and the coming bottleneck. My guest this week is once again Thomas Pochari. He writes on World Affairs Monthly. Welcome back, Tom.
Yeah, good to talk to you again, Khaled.
Okay, let's begin. My first question.
Yeah.
On December the 1st, 2020, the price for a barrel of Brent crude oil was $46.50. In October 2021, it went to above 86. Okay.
Yeah.
Currently, it is about $69.
Okay.
Even at the petrol station, the price for a full tank have gone up by quarter at least in
Yeah.
the UK. Of course, this is having impact on prices for all other goods too.
Sure.
What do you think is the reason behind the increase in prices?
Well, no doubt the COVID lockdown produced very low oil prices. So we have to acknowledge that because, in fact, at one point, I don't remember the date, but oil was below. It was minus zero. It was actually people were giving it away because they couldn't store it. There was so much oil. So okay, now that's true. However, uh, we have to acknowledge, and it's strange that the Ashkenazi Jews who rule over us will not talk about it, and of course that's very revealing. But we have to acknowledge that the typical oil well around the world, in the United States or anywhere in the world, will rise in production. You drill a hole, and then it starts coming out. It comes out a lot in the beginning, and then it's harder and harder for it to get out. And then, of course, it peaks at some point, and then it starts to decline. Now, a gentleman named Marion King Hubbert, Hubbert, he was a geologist, geophysicist. I think he was at Stanford University here in the Bay Area and San Francisco Bay Area. And he, among others, there were others probably before him, but he was kind of meticulous and he was a geophysicist and had a PhD. So he meticulously documented I think most of the oil production and oil wells in the North American, landmass. I think it was actually 48 states, not including Alaska. And he came to the conclusion, and this was like in the 60s. Everybody can look it up on the net if I get, my dates imprecise from time to time. He predicted that oil production would peak roughly 1971 or early 70s, and indeed he proved to be correct. Quite amazing. Now, back in those days, Americans weren't ruled by Ashkenazi Jews, so there was actually a debate. And Jimmy Carter got on the. I told Gail Tverberg, you can listen to her interview. There was actually a debate in the media, and Americans were well aware of the fact that we had this problem. And of course, to compensate for the loss of production and decline in production, we were going to import oil from Saudi Arabia, from Venezuela, from all over the world, because we were the biggest consumers. We had been the biggest producers in the 20th century, but we would consume more and more because we're so greedy, basically. And sure enough, we imported all this oil, and it became a problem, such a problem that the Ashkenazi Jews decided, no, we have to protect the Jews in Israel, but we also have to exploit the Iraqi oil fields because Saddam Hussein was not playing little fussy gay. He was not playing his little boy, Sunni Arab boy. He was not submitting. So he was killed, and they invaded Iraq, and they got the production up to I haven't checked, but I think it's around 4 to 5 million barrels a day. Anyway, the bottom line is that uh, the experts in this area, among them Colin Campbell, geophysicist, geologist, actually working in the petroleum industry for most of his life, a British chap with a PhD, he told me that probably non-OPEC oil would peak in 2005, and indeed it did. And of course, what we basically see all over the world is most oil wells are becoming very difficult and extremely expensive to produce oil at, right? And as time passes, you have a decline and then a great, so most oil wells around the world are declining between 5 and 7% a year. And what saved the United States and saved the world, in effect, was this tight oil that the United States had in Texas and in parts of the United States Midwest. And so they exploited that. But the problem is, you have to spend a lot of money. You have to work a lot, and spend a lot of money, capital, to actually get the oil out of the ground. So it's called tight oil. So it's in rocks, and you have to crack the rocks, and you can all look it up. So they did that, and everybody was skeptical, but they did that. They have about five, maybe seven, even larger numbers of tight oil production in the United States. But we are now at global peak production. And I note that this morning you were quite amazed and maybe shocked at Khaled that the J.P. Morgan Chase, so one of the biggest banks, if not the biggest bank in the world, they have a guy, of course, working on oil and gas and research. And he went on CNN, or he talked to the guys at CNN, and he said, look, there is no more spare capacity in Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia and the UAE maybe had some spare capacity in the past 10 years, but now they really don't. And the rest of OPEC, they're in decline. All oil wells are in decline. It's the end of the world. Now the Ashkenazi Jews, I told Gail Tverberg, they have to preach this gospel of, hey, you're going to do better next year. The stock market's going to go up. Everything's going to go up. You're going to be wealthier. And all these mestizos coming over the border, it's going to be good for you. Good for you. Everything's great, and it's going to get better. We're going to have self-driving cars. We're going to have artificial intelligence, and we have. Okay, now climate change is probably, as I explained before, a bunch of BS. Now they probably believe it, but it's a bunch of BS. Actually, we need CO2. The more CO2, the better in the atmosphere. But it's nonsense, and but they believe it because they know that we're in a dire situation. And what's really ironic about this is that people who think that they don't like Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, and of course they're right, and not like them because they're really a bunch of assholes. But they're ruling the world. But guess what? They're not going to rule the world for much longer. Once the prosperity deal ends, we're going to have a major problem. And people are going to ask, who's responsible for this? And of course, the Jews are not going to be ruling for much longer. Guns are going to come out. It's going to be a horrible, horrible situation. People are going to be very angry. How do you heat your home? Okay. Now, how long does this take? My last statement about this, how long does it take to play out? Well, I suppose, predicting the future, like I've said before, is kind of crazy. But I'd say that we probably have another 10 to 15 years at the most. And but one final statement about the production of oil and its peaking phenomenon. Uh, I'm going to be blunt, and it's going to be kind of offensive to some people, and I've used crude language, but most everybody has their head up their ass. When they pull their head out of their ass and they realize the realities of the world, and they can come to me, and I help them understand about the only journalist in the world, only scientist, only scholar in the world that actually discuss. There's a few, and I try to talk to them, but once they pull their head out of their ass, the shit is going to hit the fan, and Adolf Hitler will look like a nice guy.
Okay. Right. Let's move on to the second question.
Yeah.
Because that was quite an interesting insight about the Saudi oil, the peaking.
Yeah.
I mean, I did not know that, and
Yeah.
I don't think many people know this.
Well, it was in CNN. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Anyway,
all right.
my second question. My
Yeah.
second question is regarding the term coming bottleneck.
Right.
Okay? The coming bottleneck. Literally, it means the hindrance to progress in production.
Yes.
But I'm a little bit confused. Are we talking economically or biologically or both? How do you understand this? And what does it mean for you?
Well, when I was a young guy, I was considering going to medical school and joining the medical guild, and being a medical doctor, so and so on. Now, I realized that I didn't want to join the medical guild because they were a bunch of assholes and jerks, and pretend all they wanted to do is make good money and not really do anything else. So I abandoned that. But I always had a very strong interest in biology and in the human animal and the origins of the human animal, et cetera, et cetera. And my son Christophe is the same, and you can talk to him. So, but I realized about 25, 30 years ago, and it slowly came to me. It was sort of weird. It came to me immediately, and it slowly came to me that I realized that we, the human animal, are probably representing the epitome or the personification of the bottleneck, meaning that, and I'll read from the definition you provided me from the internet. Uh, Biology, an abrupt and severe reduction in the number of individuals during the history of a species of a population, often resulting in the loss of diversity from the gene pool. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is that the human animal dominates totally. Other mammals are basically exterminated by us. Hardly any large mammals exist anymore. They're all being wiped out. The primates are all being wiped out. We just kill them, we eat them, whatever. And they cannot compete with us. And I remember asking myself when I was a young man, why the hell are we, excuse my language, why are we so dominant? Why do we have billions and billions of people on the planet and all these other animals are just so lame by comparison? And I came to realize that Charles Darwin's theory was certainly accurate, but what was probably the case, and now I certainly is the case, that we would build out our genetic diversity by leaps and bounds. We were so successful. And then, of course, nature wants to pare back that diversity and reduce the diversity of the gene pool. And so it kills, basically results in eliminating 90% or even more of the gene pool. So you have these enormous build outs of population. Like, for example, in the 20th century human animal, we have back in 1900, I think there were probably around 1 billion people at the most, or something like that. And now we have 8 billion. So we're going to have a gargantuan, the mother, as Saddam Hussein would say, the mother of all bottlenecks. And I don't wish this upon anybody. I don't want to be a mean guy, but I theorize, and I'm pretty sure that I'm correct about this. The the world is not going to continue as we have it today. There's going to be a serious, very, very horrible and just dreadful paring back of humanity. In fact, most of these animals out there, human animals, may not even be a human species. We don't know. Species is a very arbitrary definition. So the most cunning, the most clever, the most far seeing and able to see ahead and prepare themselves, they are likely to survive. Everybody else is going to, I figure, we're going to go down 90%. And of course, if you look at it, the reason, Khaled, you're correct to link the two, uh, peak oil and the bottleneck, is because before the use of coal and hydrocarbons, the population of the world, human population, was barely a billion. And then, of course, we're so clever and we build out, we have billions of people, billions of billions. I was joking with my son, trillions of people, joking, but Indian population was always large. Chinese population was always large. That's mostly because they were good at farming. But the fact is they didn't have hydrocarbons. And now we have hydrocarbons. We have this huge, huge population. Everybody needs to be fed. Look at what's happening in Afghanistan. Probably 50% of the population is going to die if the Ashkenazi Jews don't feed them. And of course, I don't think the Ashkenazi Jews want to. They'll say, well, the Ashkenazi Jews will say, no, you can do the sodomy routine, or you can, and if you do, then we're going to feed you. And that's probably the deal in Afghanistan. But the Taliban are not going to agree to the sodomy routine, so people are going to starve to death, and it's going to be pretty gruesome. So that's my message. We're looking at a very, very gruesome reduction of the human genome. And what will result, because of the bottleneck, we become extremely powerful, because what's left in the genome is extremely powerful. You understand,
Okay.
right? Okay,
Yes.
that's it.
So what? How do you mean that this will carry out? I mean, are you talking about big wars or
Well, that's a
disease
good
or?
question. I don't know. Probably. I think nuclear war is certainly possible, even likely. I think starvation, disease, Yersinia pestis, which is the Black Plague. Who knows what will come back? I have no idea, but I think it will be a combination. There's in the Bible there's a I'm not much on the Bible reading, but I think there's a metaphor. I can't remember the four horsemen the
Yes,
yeah, what is it? I don't know. I'm not much on the Bible, but anyway, these
the
ancient.
four horsemen of apocalypse.
Yes. So basically, we're looking at the apocalypse. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
no problems. Okay,
Armageddon,
yeah,
Armageddon.
okay,
People starving, people killing each other for like I said in one of my interviews, who will be lucky to eat insects. I don't know. There's a lot of obesity in the world, and that obesity is not going to be present when this thing kicks in. Now, when does it kick in? I suppose it could be a few more years off, but when J.P. Morgan Chase and Steven Schwartzman, CEO of Blackstone, Ashkenazi Jew, when I called the bank this morning, J.P. Morgan Chase, they were very kind to me, and I was kind of joking around after I hung up, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they want me to run the bank. I'm joking, but they wouldn't. But maybe they do. So what are they going to do when this happens? They know more than you and I do. So they know that Saudi Arabia can't pony up any more oil.
true.
So what is anybody going to do? The price is going to go higher. This is the critical issue at the end here, the discussion. And Gail Tverberg, I recommend. She's a wonderful woman. She says the price goes high, and then of course everything shuts down. However, so she argues that prices will stay low. And I don't really agree. I think at some point when the people pull their head out of their ass, and I'm sorry about the crude metaphor, but when they do, they're gonna be willing to pay, because there's gold, there's precious metal gold, and then there's black gold. So you're gonna have to have both, and if you don't have both, you're gonna be dead meat. And by the
Yes,
way,
mhm.
yeah, no, I was gonna say there's a myth, I think a Greek mythology, Cassandra, and she was very smart. I don't know, I can't remember now. You can look it up. But Cassandra predicted the defeat of the Greeks in some battle, and she actually saw it coming. She had a vision, and she was ignored, of course, obviously ignored. But everything she predicted came true. Look it up. And so I think it's very typical for someone like me to make these. But I'm not the only one. I mean, Mary and King Hubbard, they all predicted a very serious reduction in the population of the human animal, all of them. And they had a hard time getting the message across. But Jimmy Carter, probably the only president that we had that was kind of serious, he actually said so. We have a problem. And Americans, like Gail Tverberg said, didn't reelect him. They want the Jewish message is we're going to be richer and richer each year. Everything's great. Everything's honky dory. I love Jews love you, and just be our slave, and everything's going to be okay.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for coming again to Restoring the
Yeah,
Mind.
it's always
Okay,
fun,
we'll leave it
guys.
at that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a
We'll leave
lot.
it at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.